Bilingual Redditors, what have you heard that you weren't supposed to? US citizen here. I've lived in Georgia for 2 years. The country, not the state. So I have a rudimentary grasp on Georgian. I was at a hostel in Istanbul a few months ago and fell deathly ill within a few hours of arrival. I'm the only person in my 4-bedroom. I proceed to spend the entire next day in bed. Never left the room. Day 3. I'm both still deathly ill and starving. I have a transatlantic flight the next day. Duck. For the first time, the cleaning staff come into the room. 2 women. I want to somehow get them the message that I'm sick and need an English speaking staff member to come to the room. Unfortunately, I don't speak a word of Turkish. But then, in my half-conscious state, I hear some chatter that sounds like smells bad. I see the other worker glance my way. Then I hear what I'm absolutely certain is yes. He smells bad. Praise Jeebus. They're Georgian. And you should have seen the look on their faces when I rolled over and blabbled I'm extremely sick. I need medicine from a pharmacy. I had exactly what I needed an hour later. Soup on a regular basis. And fresh hot tea every 30 minutes until I left. They were awesome. Good times. I used to go to lunch with my AST manager to a Mexican restaurant next door to where we worked. My AST manager is Cuban and would usually have small talk, in Spanish, with the waiters. One day he tells them about how he is the manager and I'm his assistant. This conversation gets more interesting when he tells the waiter about what a lousy worker I am. This is when I interrupted to say, in Spanish, that he, my assistant, is full of it and I let them know that I speak Spanish. The waiter laughed his ass off and my AST manager was very embarrassed. Good times. I was on holiday in the Moscow, and in the subway I heard another tourist tell his mate, in my native tongue, you know, when we speak Dutch, nobody here will understand a word of it. It's kind of a code language here. To which I replied, yeah, about that. It's not as effective as you might think. In high school my dad and I went backpacking through the Sierra Nevada mountain range in California. We were in this small town named Lone Pine, which is about 4 hours north of LA. There were tons of German and French tourists there who had been visiting the redwood forests. I speak both English and French fluently and I overheard these 2 French girls talk about me in a convenience store. One of them nodded in my direction and said, what about that one? To which the other one replied, he seems kind of dumb, but he's cute. So yeah, I'd probably sleep with him. I thought I would try my luck and approach them about it. In French I said, so, I'd like to take you up on that offer if you're up to it. They were clearly pretty embarrassed, and just walked away giggling. Edit. My dad watched this all go down. He gave me a solid high five afterward. I am bilingual but none of my stories are good. I love a particular story from my mom. However, when my mom was in her 20s, she was in line at a mall and she heard 2 Arabic men behind her making fun of all of the slutty American woman and talking about her. For your information, she was not dressed badly. She was even super modest by today's standards. But in Saudi the women cover everything but their eyes. She grew up in Saudi, so she not only spoke the language, but she was very familiar with the beliefs there. She then turned around and chewed them out in Arabic for disrespecting her and told them they should be ashamed for so boldly acting outside of their belief system at the expense of strangers in a country that does not have the same restrictions. I speak English and French and I live in Quebec. Everyone knows how some French Quebecers don't take too kindly to the English. So I'm at a cafe registered sign ordering in English because I'm in between classes and duck it. It's 7:30 AM and latte is pretty much the same in both languages. The cashier looks at me like I had puke all over myself and walks over to her manager and says in French, take care of that Anglo. When will they understand that it's French in this province? At which point, I turned bright red and I said in French, pardon, can I not order a coffee without having to have a political debate? Would you not serve travelers or immigrants? Free coffee for a year. Some little girl on the ski slopes was laughing at me in Italian because I'm a man with hot pink snowboard boots. Itch, I own those boots. One of my Israeli women friends told me that, when she was pregnant riding a subway in New York, she asked, in English, to squeeze in on a bench seat next to 2 women. One of the women said to the other, in Hebrew, let the cow sit down. Tini el pera lashavat. After she sat down, My friend then said in Hebrew the cow says thanks. Hapra merit toda. I speak fluent English and German, plus a few other languages where I can speak the basics. I was sitting in a hot tub while on vacation in California. These two German girls came a little while later and got in the hot tub. The hot tub overlooks the pool and the public beach since the hotel was on the water. I made some small chat in English when they got in and they assumed I only spoke English. So they started talking among themselves in German. They started commenting on people that would walk by with all sorts of things. I bet she has breast implants. Is probably her itch. etc. I was just listening and holding anything back. Then they started narrating this seagull who kept asking for scraps and were making some horrible remarks. Hey you fat cunt. You're already fat enough. Throw me some food you fatty. They cracked a few good jokes. Considering they were German humor, I still found them really funny. Before I knew it, I lost my it and started cracking up. They knew instantly. Their faces turned bright red from shame. I just laughed even harder. I then said thanks for the laughs. I'll leave you too. Have a good day. In perfect German. Edit. Had to specify I said that back in German, which added to their shock value. Once heard my boss tell his wife in German what he was going to do to her when he got home. It was disturbing to say the least. I was once at a grocery store with my mother. As we were browsing through to fruits and such, I overheard a conversation between a Hispanic mother and her son. He seemed about 10. His mother was telling him to go to the next aisle and to buy some chips and soda pop so that they would look more American. I felt so bad after hearing that because obviously they were illegal immigrants, and I remembered my mom and brother doing the exact same thing when they came here. They're all citizens now. Sorry, but here's a not me, but my friend's story. My buddy is Mongolian and Russian. Speaks fluently in both as well as English, but looks entirely Mongolian. We went to Vegas a year ago with another friend who is also Mongolian and hit the tables. They went to play poker together. I basically just handed my wallet over to the casino. Anyway, they're at the table with two Russian guys who are speaking Russian to each other, basically planning on trying to play my friends and drive up the bets in an attempt to get their money. My friend hears them and understands what's happening, then tells out other friend what's up in Mongolian. So now they knew they were getting played and decided to play the Russians. Basically, they bluffed their way to winning some money until the Russians left, at which time my friend said to them, in Russian, "Good playing with you guys. Take care." The Russian guy's jaws dropped and the left. French people are rude. About 10 years ago I was on a night train, going from Rome to Naples. These two addicts were discussing robbing me with a knife while I was sitting in the same cabin with them. I told them I spoke Italian, and that if they wanted to rob me, I wasn't going to make it easy for them. They actually apologized, told me they thought I was German, and moved on down the car. Not me, but my girlfriend. She speaks English and Dutch. There have been numerous times that she has been in England and heard people speaking in Dutch about things you wouldn't usually talk about in public. For example, when she was on the bus she heard two guys talking behind her describing this lump he'd found on his D. Now because they assumed no one could understand them, they were talking at normal levels. I was next to her at the time and she told me and I burst out laughing. When we got off the bus we turned to them and said "doei," which is bye in Dutch. The looks on their faces was brilliant. Reddit. Top comment is about two guys talking about lumps on their Ds. Thanks Reddit. Oh, the fun I've had being able to speak Indonesian. My family and I, like most Australians, go to Bali in Indonesia quite a bit. I learned the language for 12 years and was fluent enough to pass tertiary entrance exams. The Indonesians just aren't used to tourists making much of an effort to speak their language, so as a consequence, they say a lot. My two favorite moments would be from my first trip. We were being driven from our hotel to a really popular restaurant. We were being driven by three young guys. They were happily chatting away, blissfully unaware that I understood every word. One of them cracked a joke about taking my mother home. They were very much just cracking a joke, no real ill intent. And when they all laughed, I laughed really loudly. They stopped immediately and said in Indo, "How long have you been learning Indonesian?" Was a pretty quiet car ride after that. The other time would be at the markets. I was buying some crappy jewelry from a small stall by the side of the road and I made a point of bartering in English for a change. In the middle of our transaction she turns to her daughter, who was sitting next to her in the stall, and says, "Make sure you never barter much when the young ones are alone. They're easier to make more money." To which I said, "Could you please repeat yourself but slower?" And her face, it was magical. I had never seen someone so shocked. Her daughter ended up giving me the things for their cost price and we chatted and hung out quite a bit too. All in all, victories all around. I speak primarily English, but my family comes from a bilingual French part of the province, New Brunswick. So many of my family members communicate in French primarily. During one visit to my grandparents' house, I was looking over the shoulder of my cousin as she wrote a note to one of her friends. This would have been over 10 years ago now, if memory serves, so it wasn't very common for school-age kids to have phones and text each other. Anyway, she made no effort to hide her note from me because she didn't know I could read French. She was writing about me and my brother, writing that I was annoying. Her exact wording was "man, I'll estate tenant, Frenglish FTW," and she wrote that my brother was cute. So I proved her right in judging me annoying by abruptly shouting out, "Hey, I'm not that annoying. And you think my brother is cute? That's gross. He's your cousin." Priceless reaction. In France, Paris, I was traveling with some friends, also Portuguese, and we ordered in English in that restaurant because I am the only one who understands a bit of French in the group. And since we saw other tourists talk in English, it was easier for us. And then when eating we proceeded to talk in Portuguese. And I hear a regular looking French family say, "Damn Portuguese. They are all dirty and thieves. And so poor. I bet they had to work for like 2 years just to come here." And other insults along the lines that all Portuguese women are prostitutes and etc. When we left I said in the most perfect French accent I had to the father, who was like 30 years old. I was 17 at the time. "Well, at least Portugal isn't known for surrendering and being rude. Do you want to repeat all you said about my country outside, one-on-one?" You should have seen his face. I did not know French people thought of us like that. Seriously, that left me wondering what the hell did we Portuguese people do to be seen like that? Not me, but my dad. He spoke English and German. While at the zoo when I was a kid, another father and his kid were talking. The kid asked his dad, German, why that man, my dad, was walking with a limp. The boy's dad began answering, in German, something along the lines that it was rude to ask such questions. Good thing he didn't understand you. My dad smiled at the boy and, in German, answered, because I hurt my ankle chasing after a boy who asked rude questions. The boy's dad and my dad had a good laugh. The boy looked suitably chagrined, and perhaps learned a lesson. I ate ice cream. Nothing. Nobody speaks Swedish. Not really something I wasn't supposed to hear. But, I was bringing my child to a French school. The teachers always are talking to one another in French in front of me. Then one day a kid randomly asked me what this is a picture of. I replied Le Boeuf, which I know because a street near my house was named that, and then all of a sudden they stopped talking in front of me in French. They all seemed embarrassed, ashamed. Makes me wonder that they were saying before they thought I didn't speak French. Apart from English, I natively speak Italian and Slovenian. The first time I brought my girlfriend to Italy, to see where I grew up, the main city I showed her was Venice, as I was born there. There was this one time, when we had walked all day in the secret passageways of Venice, so we both were naturally tired and a little sweaty. As we hopped on the train, two guys besides us started oogling us too and making fascist comments about us. I wish Mussolini was still here. He would show these F% Antkas to speak their own dirty language. Note, my GF doesn't speak Italian, but she does understand a little. Blood boiled up until we stepped off the train, as I approached them, and loudly said, next time, you should probably keep your neo-fascist and racist comments to yourself. The whole car heard me and immediately turned to look at the blushing guy, who just replied with a why yes. Needless to say, I triumphantly walked off the train while my GF turned around towards the window these guys were sitting at, with a big smile stamped on her face. Arab here. One time I was at Costco and I overheard a lady talking to her husband, in Arabic of course, about her yeast infection in the line for the food court. Needless to say I lost my appetite. I am bilingual, Dutch Russian. I live in the Netherlands. I was in St. Petersburg 2 weeks ago. I have a friend who also speaks both Russian and Dutch. We have known each other since we were 2. Our parents are good friends. So they booked flights to Petersburg for the same period. He was staying at his grandma's and I with my grandma. So we were together, buying vodka at some supermarket. We are talking Dutch together, and English to the cashier, just for fun. So, all of a sudden I hear 2 girls, 18 years old, talking. They start rating us, and come to the conclusion that we are quite cute. They guessed our age to be 19. We are, me 15 and he 14. I give the look to my friend. By some kind of best friend telepathy we decide that I should make the move. So I turn and say in Russian, well girls, you look quite nice too. We can maybe hang out or something. They scream and laugh, and accept the invitation. We then went to a cafe registered sign, and after that to the movies. We still occasionally chat with them. I have told this story before but here it goes again. I am white and I live in an Asian country, so while I was walking in the supermarket I had this kid point at me and tell his dad in Chinese, look, a white person. So I waited till his dad left and I walked past the kid and hushed in a jokey way in Chinese, I know I am white. He looked terrified. I'm white, but I speak Mandarin and Japanese fluently. I've overheard a lot of things. The most memorable was when I went to the Yokohama Chinatown with my Japanese friends. A group of Japanese tourists and a group of Chinese tourists were in an argument. So my friends and I tried to defuse the situation. While we were listening to each side's story in Japanese, there was talk on both sides about me from both groups, in their native tongue. So once we finished hearing each side's case, I tell the Japanese group in Japanese the other side's point of view. Their eyes bulged. Then I told the Chinese group in Mandarin the other side's story. Everyone's eyes bulged, including my friends. I didn't tell them I spoke Mandarin too. Once in the Philippines, I caught a few girls talking about how beautiful and pointy my American nose was. Mostly related. I've shared this before. My wife and I have adopted 2 kids from China on 2 separate occasions. We had some time to wait before the first one, so we learned some basic Mandarin to help with our trip and connect a bit with our daughter's birth culture. While there, a day or so after we got her, we were in the Walmart, yes, Walmart, in Zhengzhou, when a younger woman walks by, sees a large American guy with a pale red-headed wife carrying a Chinese toddler in a sling, doubles back and with a fake smile says, "Ni buzahun ni di mama, ma," which works out to "you don't like your mom, do you?" My wife spins around and, in Mandarin, basically says, "Oh yes she does." The look on that woman's face carried me through the day.